everyone, and welcome back to the Better Advertising with Better Media podcast. I am incredibly excited today to have one of my favorite brands on the podcast. So we have Alicia Ponzani, and she is the e-com manager for one of the top-selling Prime Day brands, which is actually one of the main reasons I decided to reach out. When I say top-selling, I mean top 5 products sold during Prime Day. And it is the Premier Nutrition. I believe it was the ready-to-drink. Was that correct?
Yeah, the ready-to-drink protein shakes. We did really well. Actually, outperformed what we were expecting. So it was we say it's our best Prime Day yet, but we say that every Prime Day. So,
well, when you say really well, top 5 selling product, that is absolutely insane. You think of all of the big name players that participate in Prime Day, and I don't think when people think of Prime Day deals, they necessarily think of a RTD, a ready to drink. I mean, I didn't. I always buy my supplements and things like that. But when it comes to planning a Prime Day, with some of the difficulties that we discussed before hitting record of multiple different marketplaces and a lot of different variables, what was your biggest priority this year leading into Prime Day?
Yeah, I think there were a couple things that we were thinking about in order to make this Prime Day big. I think one of them was obviously optimizing our Amazon media. So, we have our search and display, but there's also different things like share of voice packages, really leaning into lead up, and just trying to get really strong deal placements in places where our consumers will see them. So think Amazon homepage. A lot of times the brands you're seeing are Amazon brands, so they tend to win a lot of those placements, or they're big brands. I think the last Prime Day, Liquid IV was everywhere. I don't know, I just got so many placements there, but it was really securing the top placements within Amazon. And then the second piece was really leaning into our social commerce. So not only running media on Amazon, but driving external traffic to Amazon around Prime Day, both in the lead up and the day of.
I know this is a little bit of a vague question, but a lot of times when brands start talking about external traffic driving into Amazon attributions, one of the most complex things that comes up, how important is it for you all to have perfect attribution when you're driving traffic from social? Is it something you prioritize, or do you just look at the general lift?
So that's a great question. I think this was our first time that we did a full funnel activation. So again, upper funnel media from the brand side, to TikTok, to Meta, to everything. So for us, as we're gathering up all the data, that actual attribution isn't as important, but we are prioritizing it. So we're saying, hey, for this time, it was get everything running and driving to Amazon to make it big. And then we started to see the results come in. We're like, wow, that was really successful. And we know that a lot of the upper funnel media and the social media are more awareness driving tactics. And then step 2 is really seeing how we can optimize the attribution piece. So we do have that, but this was the first time we actually had to get all of our partners to really dive into Amazon specifically.
That makes sense. I think the second thing, specifically around Prime Day, that always comes up is Prime Day worth it? Is it incremental? And is the drop in sales leading up and leading out worth the lift you get on Prime Day? And I know it's a little bit of an easier argument for any CPG brands, anyone that has high repeat purchases, right? You can justify a lot of the investment because if you bring someone new into the brand, they're going to stay. But what did you all see after that huge Prime Day? Have you continued to see strong results post-Prime?
Yeah, so for us, like you said, Prime Day is a great time to bring in new to brand people. So if we think about a Prime Day and we put all of our goals and our strategies around new people, then we see that big lift. And from historical Prime Days, we've always seen a kind of a bump and stick in our consumption. And with the lead out piece, we have remarketing efforts. So we are always looking to, okay, we've got a lot of people in, looking at how long does it take for someone to repurchase a protein shake, and how do we retarget them and engage them? Do we offer them a deal? Do we serve them with another ad? Do we take some of that, those attributions and then put them into other existing campaigns? Or, if we were running a very targeted campaign, we're like, okay, how do I, target sponsored product ads against these people? You can't target new to brand specifically. So it's kind of just looking at the windows, 30, 60, 90. And we found that to be successful. So far we're seeing good results. I think one of the challenges this year, and I put a LinkedIn post on this because I think someone else also talked about it, is like the Target Circle week was right before Prime Day. So we actually saw our products price scrape to Target, and historically they haven't. So we actually had one of our biggest weeks ever because of Target. And then we had Prime Day. So I was expecting to see like a bigger trough or a longer trough. So far, I think we seem to be okay, but that's something to think about as, you know, other retailers are also running promotions, and I don't think that's going to change. So for anyone that's like running Prime Day, I think that's another thing to think about is like, yes, Prime Day might have been successful for you, but look at like how other retailers are doing and just make sure as you're planning this, you're not overlapping, or at least like, hey, if your Target's going to run a deal, like run it on these items and we're going to run it on the other items.
There are so many things to consider. E-commerce is not making it easy. I think every month there's a different platform, a different retail media network. We have small things like the Amazon TikTok partnership. I say small things. It's actually, I would say, relatively huge if it could be incorporated in a way that's seamless for the customer. But there's so much to keep up with.
Yeah, I mean, like, and one of the things I think we were talking earlier, but I follow BTR Media and your team and everyone that's posting and podcasts. Like, I think you guys are very on top of it. And, you know, there's a lot of different people within this field that are experts that I started following on LinkedIn. So I'm always like every day it's like, okay, what's new? And then I think it's also them managing what is actually strategic, right? Because there's a lot of small things you can do. And I feel like I set it up as kind of a grid around what's easy but has really good results versus what's easy and like, you know, it doesn't really drive much. So I feel like Amazon Posts was one when I joined that I took over, and now you're seeing posts can turn into sponsored brands. So like that was a good investment. You know, it was free, it was easy, but there's other things like some of the influencer stuff where it's like, that's like, I have to write a creative brief and it gets really involved. So it's hard to pick and choose. And I'm sure your team has to figure out what you want to do with your clients too, because like as clients, we want everything, but we can't do everything.
100%. And there's so much shiny object syndrome as well, and setting expectations and balancing, like you said, like the scope of our project. AMC is another one I'm going to bring up. I'm really curious at how much you are utilizing AMC, especially as you're starting to blend kind of that brand and performance marketing. Are you dabbling too much in it?
Yeah, so we've been dabbling in the reports that our AMG team is able to provide. So like those standardized like path to purchase, you know, and things like if you run multiple ads, here's how much your ROAS can grow and things like that. We are working internally. We just got a data analyst to actually like take in that AMC data and help us understand it. Our agency doesn't have that type of person on their team. And I'm sure like other agencies are probably scrambling to find someone that can actually make sense of the AMC data. So I think next stages for us is to ingest that AMC data. And then I really am excited because being on Vendor Central, I keep looking at Seller Central. I'm like, oh, they have all these really cool audience targeting opportunities and we can't do them, but through AMC we can. So it's like, you know, things like cart abandoners, like that's not something we can target right now, but with AMC, you know, once we get that up, that will be something that is a great thing because there's a lot of people that are interested in the category, but maybe they just like haven't fully clicked, and you're like, you are the closest person I can get to.
100%. And that's why I was curious, because you mentioned, you know, that incrementality aspect of bringing someone back into your funnel. Maybe they purchased twice and they fell off for 6 months. And how do you reacquire them as a customer? Is it giving them a discount? Is that what's going to bring them back? And that's where AMC becomes really, really powerful, in my opinion, as well as how granular we're going to be able to get with those audiences. Like if you think about this, scalability is going to be difficult. AI is going to help, but being able to serve a specific audience, a creative or a discount for exactly where they're at in your funnel is going to be really, really powerful for brands. And bringing it in-house is also a really interesting aspect that I want to shout you guys out for. Had a few brands mention doing the same because, I mean, you do have to have some level of SQL knowledge. And I don't think any agencies or softwares are going to be able to scale it out in the near future in a way that's cost efficient for a brand. That's why everyone's doing the templated path to purchase and ad type overlaps, because AMC is incredible, but you right now need to know SQL. There's some no-code options now, and then writing custom queries for every specific brand need. So it's really cool to see that you guys are making that investment internally for it to be utilized in the future.
I think it's definitely a new territory. Like my manager and I, we're not used to that side of the business. So it'll definitely be a lot of fun to like once we get there and can get some insights from it. But yeah, it's an important thing to think about because like as an e-commerce manager, a lot of my time is actually spent on the marketing, the advertising, all the product launches and the PDPs. So like, and we have a separate salesperson as well just for Amazon. So we don't have the time to be building queries. And unless your agency has it, it's like you have to find another way because, you know, you keep hearing about AMC and you're like, okay, there's all these cool capabilities, but it's kind of hard to unlock right now.
Yes. You mentioned kind of creative and PDPs, and I just want to give a huge shout out to all of your cookie dough creatives. Your SPV, your headline search ad, it's absolutely genius. They look fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, our creative on our limited time products is a lot of fun. It's very whimsical. So we have like pumpkin spice actually just launched last week. It is already pumpkin spice season. I know it's August, but it kind of is really fun and you're going to see a lot of ads for that one as well. But I think one of the things I personally love is I just think creative's a lot of fun. It's very enticing. I mean, you see something that you like. I mean, if your click-through rates are high, then that means people are interested. And I think what's important, though, is I've done a lot of A/B testing. You know, it's not just pick one creative and fly with it. It's like we've tried a lot of different stuff. One of the things that I think we're trying to test more of is lifestyle, and I think a lot of other brands are also doing that. The problem is for lifestyle right now, you either need to have like a photo shoot, which just takes time and money. You can have UGC content, but you know, that's also like, you have to get the licensing agreement. So I saw someone actually post that Creator Connections, you can get a licensing agreement to reuse an ad. So that was exciting. I learned that today. Or you're using AI, and I've used Amazon's AI and I just don't think it's there yet. I've had a couple people send me some other online resources to test out, but that's kind of the next phase, is to test what lifestyle ads work. But also what I found out was interesting, and I think it went against everything our team wanted to believe to be true, was that a lot of the auto-gen ads perform really well on DSP. Like these sponsored brand videos, the fun creative works, but for like sponsored products, just having the product there, and if you have a deal, it does so well.
It does. We've seen the same. With the moment Sponsor Brands video or Sponsor Brands AI headlines were released, I had this argument. Same thing with SPVs. I had multiple creatives come to me and basically be like, no legal's gonna approve that. It's a terrible asset. It looks horrible. But I was like, it looks native to Amazon. Amazon, in my opinion, has never had a gorgeous experience. When you're searching, it's optimized to make purchasing easy. So for like Sponsor Brands video, headline search ads, we've split test like very expensive 6-figure commercial grade creatives against something as easy as the Sponsor Brands video template creator, and the click-through rates are almost the same. Now, when you start getting into like sponsored TV and SPV, right, customers have a specific creative in mind when they think of commercials. That's going to be a very different experience. But when it comes to just on-platform assets, like the simplest typically works the best.
And I think too, like just talking to friends, I'll be like, hey, on this Amazon page, just like, what do you like? What do you don't like? And just my own personal research. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't click on things that are sponsored. So it's kind of funny because they like stuff that looks native. And yeah, that was tough to swallow because I really wanted to run really fun creative on everything. But yeah, I think from a creative standpoint, the more upper funnel creative is where you have more opportunity to have fun. But I do think one of the challenges that I have had is working with our creative teams to get the right messaging for lower funnel media. So like, you know, you have your, let's say, big TV ad, and how do you really scale that down and keep it consistent, but also know that the consumer is in a different part of the purchase funnel, right? They're low. They already kind of know they want a protein shake. So, you know, one thing too is like a video will play on the search page, but people aren't listening to the sound. So you have to add copy and to the video. So like, it's just small things like that, but they do make quite a difference on the performance side.
Most definitely. And I think it's bringing those two languages together because historically they've been ran separate. And I had Vanessa McPhill on for our earlier podcast, and this is like the core of our conversation was like the blending of performance and brand marketing, because streaming TV is unlocking the ability to be incredibly granular with a broad-based commercial. So it's like, how do you balance those two initiatives? Like typically anyone who is going to run like linear TV or any traditional TV campaigns, they wouldn't think to make it interactive. They wouldn't throw a QR code. It was always like dial this number and go through this funnel. But we have the opportunity to do both. And I think from what we've seen with like AMC Path to Purchase is even if it's an interactive ad, they may not interact, but there's still a very high likelihood they're going to go to Amazon and then see an SBV ad that needs to be slightly different because like you said, it's not going to autoplay with audio. It's all these really small tweaks that I think are fundamental for people like us who have been doing this for 5 years. But if you're thrown into an e-commerce role, you're not going to know the difference. It's going to be really difficult to overcome that hurdle because there is so many small nuances to e-com.
And I think one of the things that I've done a lot of is building frameworks for different aspects of the business. And so recently it was building a creative brief for our creative agencies that's e-commerce specific, like explaining tile size, explaining the goal, and like why it has to be different. And so I think the big question we're having is like, how do you brief creative agencies to help them understand your e-commerce needs? And like a lot of this creative, while I'm using it on Amazon, we're also repurposing across like your Walmarts, your Targets, and your other channels. So it's just gotten very complex. And so I think it's important to bring those teams along to all the changes.
When you're looking at kind of cross-channel management, we talked about lining up your promotions during a Prime Day. What are you seeing going into that creative element? What differences are you seeing across the platforms? Are you seeing a really large difference in like what nuances trigger an algorithm or your organic rank? Is there anything key you have there?
So we haven't seen too much yet. I think Amazon has been our main channel. Target, I think this coming year we'll see a lot more of it. Walmart is definitely a big one. I think what's hard too is just like the selections are different across these other channels. So as we kind of, right size some of the selection, I think we're going to kind of see things change. It is interesting to note though too is like depending on what items you have in store versus online, we do see difference in performance. So like if Amazon's carrying a selection that's much bigger than in store, those flavors that aren't in store usually perform pretty well. But once an in-store starts carrying it, you actually might see a flavor drop off. So it's helpful to know, or it's helpful to have someone on like the sales planning side know when all these promotions are running, and then like what selection you have to understand performance and like pack size. Like it's a whole challenge. Outside of the marketing side, it's just like, what are you offering? Who's running deals when? Why is my item price scraping? Where else can you buy it? Those sorts of things are just like the day-to-day part of the business.
Right now, do you find that you have to be more proactive, or you can be proactive with that? Or is it still a little reactive of, oh, my sales are down week over week, let's go see if there's anything that happened externally, if anything went viral, if there was any deals in store? Do you have anything in place for that?
So I have a direct report that's awesome at catching things, and she's like my go-to person. So I would say we're a little bit more reactive, but we react very quickly. We try to be proactive, and that's actually an initiative going into the next fiscal year is like we need certain teams to kind of be the leads. And as we've built out our sales, like our sales team has grown dramatically. So like as they've built out those positions, they're kind of informing us like, hey, here's what's up and coming. So our team knows. But we've made that a point of like, hey, we're reactive, but we would like to be more proactive.
Gone back and forth and balanced both. I remember one of the first e-commerce lessons I had I was working at an incredibly toxic agency, and I got yelled at for being too reactive at some point in time. And I got like pulled aside. It was very like baseball coach mentality of like, you need to be more proactive, XYZ. And I've thought a lot about that because it's hard in e-commerce. Like 7 years ago, and I'm obviously traumatized by this experience because I'm bringing it up on a podcast to this day. But things like going viral on TikTok, or there's a million different variables, inventory issues, caused us as an agency to really force a level of reactivity on our team. I think was a positive, because you just can't plan for everything. Like, it's way too difficult to have deep roots in every single platform and every single vertical of your business. And you got to have a team that can hop on and just learn really quick. And like, you can balance some level of systems when you 80-20 it, but then there's also this skill set for people in e-commerce where you have to be able to jump on and just figure it the hell out.
I'm sorry for that experience, first off. But yeah, I definitely can relate. I tell people when they're like joining our team, I was like, okay, you have to be smart. Don't work too quickly, but be ready to work fast. So like, I think like what after working on Amazon for a couple years now, I've learned is that there's kind of these big buckets of things. So like inventory, price scraping, promotions. If you keep those buckets in mind and you kind of know a couple things that could happen, if you always have that in mind, you'll have a guide. But like you said, it's really hard to be proactive on e-com because, again, everything's changing by the hour. It's like I'll go into a meeting and all my sponsored products and brand ads are showing up. And then they're like, oh, show us. And you're like, oh, no, my competitor is winning because it's day parting. I was like, no. If you were on at 11 a.m., this was beautiful. I should have screenshotted it.
I think we've all got that dreaded C-suite message of, I typed in protein shake or protein drink. Why are we not up there? And it's like, then you're having to balance the conversation. I can only imagine the position you're in because you're also ranked number one for, I would say, the majority of your keywords. So that's a whole balancing act I'd be curious to dive into. Have you changed a lot of your search strategy when you started improving from a BSR perspective? Did you have to like pull back or reallocate?
Yeah. So I have to give a shout out to Benji Shepard on my team, who is my key person. We were actually meeting before this, had an hour conversation around just like, hey, how can we win, category terms, brand, like what's our strategy? And I think a lot of it was one, laddering up to the goals. Like, what is your goal? Is your goal to drive loyalty? Are you on the defensive? Are you new to brand? And once you align there, then it was like, okay, what ad placements are the right placements? And then we built out an always on strategy that we're always optimizing. And then we actually have a separate strategy for deal days. Like, they're two completely different strategies. And I think also we're actually making a lot of optimizations probably within the next couple of weeks. So I'm curious to see how those will go. It's learning what Amazon has launched that's different. So like sponsored brand videos has some new goals that you can use. It's like, okay, let's try it. But it's also, are you willing to try new things knowing that there is a risk? So I'm someone that is willing to risk it, knowing that there will be something to learn. And most of the time we've been very successful. And if you're not successful, at least you know. So I know not all some brands are very hesitant. They'll be like, oh, I only want to spend on sponsored products. It's like, well, there's these other, placements and there's these other goals that you have, or ideally you want to drive people to your PDPs. But like brand store is still really important. And as long as you have a solid one, like that could be a new strategy. But I also think you need to make sure that the KPIs are there. So it's like making sure we've had the right strategy, what KPIs are we tracking, and then, let's go for it and try it. And let's give ourselves a time limit and say 1 month, let's see what happens. If it doesn't, we're going to change it again.
This is incredible. I want to give a huge shout out to Jeff Cohen because he's going to listen to this specific snippet and laugh because him, Gabby, and I spoke on stage at Accelerate on Test and Learn. That was like the whole theme of everything we discussed. And the two main variables that we mentioned that need to be in place is you need to understand the expectations behind what you're launching, right? If you're launching sponsored TV, your ROAS is not the right KPI. If you're driving to your store, it's a little bit more of an awareness play than a PDP. But the second part of that was Amazon makes test and learn so easy. There's really no reason not to test and learn. Like, you can go run a sponsored TV campaign right now for $150 a day if you wanted to. Like, that's insane. You're running an ad that's potentially showing up on Prime TV for $150. Like, why not test and learn?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get into e-commerce as well. Is like on the brand side, those projects like the MMM and like just getting data back takes so long. I'm like, give me 4 weeks. What is your hypothesis? I'll go to the brand team if you're launching something new. I'm like, okay, what are your guys' insights? Like, we're launching this product. Why do you think consumers want to buy it? And then I'll go and create ads and I'll be like, okay, we're going to A/B test. And then I'll come back in 4 weeks. We'll have a result. So I definitely think, like you mentioned, if you're not A/B testing, you're not actually learning anything and it's worth the risk. And then I think the second piece of that, though, is really laddering up all of these tests to like leadership. I think that that's still something that I'm trying to figure out because, we're in the weeds. So like we know all these details, like I have like all these nitty gritty things, but from their perspective, when they only see the output, it's hard for them to understand. So it's almost like you're spending time educating them on like the funnel and how we're moving consumers through and what marketing activations are at each funnel. And Amazon now has the full funnel, which is awesome. So it's exciting when you can activate on it, but we weren't always able to, right? Like I didn't have certain budgets, but if we can prove in a test and learn like, hey guys, like this sponsored brand test or this STV test got this many impressions, then I can go back to my brand team and be like, I would love to have like $80,000 to do this test around Prime Day. And it makes kind of that conversation a lot easier.
100%. I feel like the majority of my time now, as anyone who follows me on LinkedIn probably knows, is spent on educating. And it's because I've been thrown into so many of these conversations where I know something's in the best interest of a brand, but the brand has never utilized it before. So there's a lot of distrust. Or maybe they tested it 3 years ago when the product was brand new and now it's been improved a ton and they don't know how to work it. So I'm on those calls presenting all of those solutions. And the second side of that as well is we have more data than ever before. Like AMC unlocked a ton of that for us. And you said AMG, which makes me laugh because like you can always date how long someone's been in the space and whether or not they use AMG. AMG is Amazon Media Group, which is Amazon's DSP managed service for anyone listening in. And DSP and AMG can be really difficult to sell to leadership. Like they're used to the overall packages, but sometimes it can be difficult to swallow $100,000 streaming TV campaign with a 0.7 ROAS. But I think Amazon's done a much better job of giving things like path to purchase. You shouted that out earlier, so I kind of want to reiterate for those listening in, if you're running DSP at all and you have AMC access, you can go in and pull the insights that say when a customer saw a streaming TV ad and then a sponsored product ad, they were 5% more likely to convert. That's really low. It's usually a little higher. And when you run this search campaign in correlation with this DSP campaign, your return on ad spend was 50 to 60% better. And those are the metrics that I think unlock a lot of power for leadership because now you're able to show them both the stages of the funnel they're used to from off platform, but also give them some of the data that justifies it rather than our OG AMG days. When AMG used to sell a package in the very beginning, it'd be like, you're going to get 3 million impressions. And that was it. Like, end of sentence. They would not give you any other data, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah, I love that you included the path of purchase because it's hard for people to, outside of like working on the e-commerce side, to grasp all the different campaign types and placements that we have. But when you show them like, hey, we manage where the money falls within the different campaign placements, but the result is, ROAS, sales. I think that's when leadership is buying into it and then trusting our teams to make the right choice with the money that we have. I still feel like I'm sure a lot of e-commerce teams out there, like you have a lot of autonomy, which is really great, but people still don't know what you do. And so I love that there's now a better way to be like, if we run these types of ads, this is what happens. And so therefore I need budget to be able to do this. And also sometimes like if you're having problems, you can say, hey, well, we don't have streaming TV, so we're missing the upper funnel, but we would love to, have some to test, and then let's revisit this and let's see if our sales grew.
Yeah, and Amazon's willing to partner in a lot of those ways as well. Like even right now, I think if you commit 5K, 15K, those are two very different numbers, but if you commit one of those numbers, they'll create a commercial grade video for you, which is a relatively good price because you're getting double the spend and the video creative with the same budget. And like you said, if you go back, hey, I don't think this makes sense for me right now, but can I dip my toes in here? It's a lot of opportunity to test and learn without having to go against the massive budgets that some of your competitors may be deploying. And those micro tests are a good way to kind of teach your learnings to your leadership department. I also want to give a shout out because you mentioned we were able to meet up at Unbox last year. Amazon at these conferences does an incredible job on their activations. They typically have a house that you can walk through and you're going to walk through the living room and it's going to have The Summer I Turned Pretty or The Boys playing on TV. And then you're going to walk into the kitchen and it's going to have an Alexa device that's playing a certain, waiting on mine to go off, that's going to be playing a certain podcast. And then it's going to walk to XYZ. And those placements is going to help you understand Amazon advertising is not just search anymore. Like, everyone is still in this PPC sponsored product mentality, but in reality, customers don't shop like that. And Amazon's grown so much in the upper funnel realm that it can be hard. It can be a hard pill to swallow for people who've been in the space for a long time, because we're caught in this mentality of PPC, PPC, PPC. But in reality, like, we have to start moving up the funnels. We're going to get lost.
I love that. And I had a lot of fun at Unbox, so I'm excited to go back to Austin, and it was just me this year as a representative, and I'm bringing my full team. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person there. But yeah, I think what you said about all of those other activations, like, Thursday Night Football, the NBA, like, there are all of these really cool activations. And I think part of that is, like, you have the Amazon teams trying to sell you on it, but it's also like selling the brand team as to, like, this isn't like some of these big activations aren't only driving Amazon sales, they're going to drive sales in Walmart and Costco and Kroger, because people don't just shop Amazon, they shop in all different channels. And, we have the data to prove it. So it now becomes, hey, when we think about our upper funnel media, like streaming TV or like YouTube, like, those are decisions that our agencies are also making now. And so it's cool to see that Amazon is playing a part, not only growing Amazon, but growing other customers, which I'm sure Amazon probably is like, we want to keep it on Amazon. But the point is that people see your brand, and then it's like, yeah, Amazon is a great app. So if you don't have the app, I make everybody in my meetings, I'm like, get the app, because there's so many cool things and beta tests that they're doing. But, I think the connection of that upper funnel and all these cool activations are worth testing if you have the budget. I mean, I know they're expensive, but like you mentioned, if you're like, hey, I really want to do this, what could we do? Or like, I'll always ask the team, like, what betas could we get in on? And they're like, well, we think this one would be a fit. Or like, we have a great vendor manager who, not everyone has those vendor managers, but when you do, like, utilizing them to be like, what opportunities am I not thinking about outside of Amazon advertising? And then how can I pull that advertising team in?
100%. And I want to shout out the fact that you mentioned when you start moving off of Amazon and start serving ads externally on any of these other providers, you're serving in a way that is going to drive traffic to your website, to your Instagram page, to your in-store. And I have two great examples of that. One was that Accelerate presentation. I believe the brand that was interviewed mentioned that it was a 20% lift off platform when they increased their investment on platform. So there's a direct correlation between in-store sales and AMS investment, which is crazy because that is, that's PPC. So PPC investment directly correlated to their in-store growth, and that's because they're getting so much more visibility. The second example I'll shout out is the e.l.f. Cosmetics interview I just did, where they said their Super Bowl campaign holistically drove a $4 return on ad spend. That is insane. It's a Super Bowl campaign for a very low margin product, but the reach of it, the virality across TikTok and social and XYZ drove a $4 return, like, for the Super Bowl, which is a very, very expensive commercial slot.
That's impressive. And I think it just goes to show that all of these activations on TikTok, social, these upper funnel Amazon tactics, like, you kind of have to be playing in them to some degree. Like, even if it's just dipping your toe in, and to not be worried that, like, you're going to isolate your other accounts. I think that's the biggest thing too. I mean, I think the one area where we have to be careful is our own social channels. But outside of that, I think, with AMC, hopefully we can start showing that, this is why we need to invest in these marketing tactics, because you just want to reach consumers where they are in their day to day. And then they'll shop on Amazon and other places. But Amazon is also becoming a search engine as well. Like, instead of going to Google, I just go to Amazon now.
Yes, I'm really curious. We'll probably wrap things up here because I feel like I could go for another 3 hours. So for all of my listeners, I apologize, all of my random questions at this point. But you mentioned, Amazon is becoming a search engine. And over Prime Day, they actually were pushing traffic on the homepage to Buy with Prime sites. So think about that from a Buy with Prime perspective. You have an amazing website. You have Buy with Prime enabled. Amazon was putting your website on their homepage. So even without having products direct on Amazon, you're able to piggyback off of all of the traffic, like Alicia mentioned, is search traffic. People are going to Amazon to search for products. And I think the enablement of Rufus and their openness to drive traffic off platform and partner with other social providers is just going to show that their game is 5, 10, 15 years out. They're not worried about the next 3 to 6 months. I mean, they are. But the way they're thinking about their platform is beyond, I think, what most people can even comprehend.
I totally agree. And I think as like brand marketers and the e-commerce leads, it's our job to make sure our brand is playing where Amazon is playing. And so, with TikTok and Meta, they're a little bit newer, I think, to a lot of e-commerce managers or brand managers. But there's so much information out there, and it's just picking the right agencies that also have that expertise to help guide you. And even like LinkedIn, like there's some people that are like, this is what we've learned on TikTok. I was like, oh, maybe I should try that. Or, oh, I actually tried something different. I don't think that worked as well. So I think like pairing that with Amazon's expertise of building those opportunities will only help you grow your brand.
I could not agree more. Well, Alicia, I want to give you a huge shout out for the Prime Day success. It is not an easy feat. I do not know a lot of people that have been able to accomplish what you all have accomplished, especially being as lean and efficient as your team is. So huge congratulations on that. And furthermore, thank you so much for hopping on your podcast and sharing your insights. This was an amazing interview, and I'm so happy we were able to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Destiny. We really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to meet you and the rest of your team at Unboxed in October.
With cowboy hats. I am so excited. Like, that is my only goal at this point for Unboxed is like, I'm bringing my boots and getting some cowboy hats.
I think like pink cowboy hats sound really fun.
Okay, we'll make that happen. We should start a little group chat for the concert. Everyone needs to show up in pink cowboy hats so we can find each other.
I love that.
Amazing. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.